Well, hello there. I am Henry Keane, and this is News Pulse, the beating heart of the news from Ukraine and for the world. Russian stocks and bonds continue plummeting. The Moscow Stock Exchange has been downwards for more than 2 weeks in a row. This is a record bad since 1998, when the whole country defaulted and the financial and economic crisis went in. In parallel with the great deal of collapse of the stock market, the price of Russian oil, Urals, also is falling. What is the reason behind all that in general, and what consequences could it lead to for the budget of the aggressor country in particular? Valeria Nikipelova investigates for you.
Global oil prices continue to decline. Over the past week, Brent crude futures fell by nearly 11%, while WTI dropped by more than 10%. According to the latest data, prices now stand at around $63 and $59.50 per barrel, respectively. These are the lowest levels since April 2021. The turbulence in the oil market hasn't spared Russian crude either.
The country's Urals grade, by far the country's top export stream, slumped to 52.76 a barrel at the Baltic seaport of Primorsk on Friday. Data from Argus Media show it was last below $50 in June 2023, from the Bloomberg publication with reference to the data of the Argus Media.
Russia's national budget is based on an oil price of $69.70 per barrel. In March 2025, the country's Ministry of Finance stated that it expected the average price for the year to be closer to $60 rather than $70. But as of today, the actual price has fallen 25% below what Moscow had forecast. Oil revenues are critical to the economy of the aggressor state. Nearly 1 in every 3 rubles in the Russian budget comes from energy exports.
If you look at the budget, oil and petroleum products make up 30% of it. A 20% drop in prices means significantly less revenue. Why? Because many companies will be forced to shut down. In areas where production costs are high, and there are such regions, the average cost may be around $30 to $35, but for some the break-even point is about $55. Anything below that is a loss. And then there are taxes. They simply won't be able to pay them. That's a direct hit to the budget. My forecast is that if prices fall by 20%, the budget could lose about $30 to $35 billion. That's a massive number.
The reason for the oil price collapse lies in a decision announced by U.S. President Donald Trump on April 2nd to impose tariffs on all goods imported into the United States. Tariffs on Chinese goods will be 34%, from EU countries 20%, Switzerland 31%, and Kazakhstan 27%. Some of the highest rates are imposed on Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Although Russia isn't on Trump's tariff list, the economic blow to the aggressor state could be severe.
Mr. Trump recently threatened to impose tariffs on buyers of Russian oil, a trade that is the lifeline of the country's war machine if President Vladimir Putin did not cooperate with U.S. efforts to broker a ceasefire in Ukraine. Such tariffs would significantly complicate the country's foreign trade. Mr. Trump may be holding back new economic restrictions on Russia as leverage in the peace talks. From the New York Times publication citing Alexandra Prokopenko, a fellow at the Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center in Berlin.
Just hours after Trump's tariff announcement, oil exporting countries in the OPEC Plus group, including Saudi Arabia, Russia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Iraq, pledged to increase crude output. This is the second major factor behind the price drop. According to Reuters, U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright is expected to travel to the Middle East soon, likely to negotiate an increase in global oil supply.
Wright will start his trip in the United Arab Emirates, followed by Saudi Arabia over the weekend, and then Qatar. Low oil prices could also help the United States by pressuring Russia, another top oil exporter, to come to an agreement over its war in Ukraine by choking some of the revenue Moscow depends on to fund the fighting. From the Reuters publication citing a source in the U.S. Department of Energy.
Russia spends nearly $1 billion per day on its war against Ukraine, according to Kirilo Budanov, head of the main directorate of intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, speaking in late February 2025. Over the course of this year, the Kremlin plans to spend a record-breaking 13.5 trillion rubles on its invasion of Ukraine. Reported by Valeria Nekipelova, UATV News.
They operate both day and night. The bullet wounds are rarely treated, and the stabilization point of Ukrainian military medics located near the front line. Almost all the injuries of the soldiers is shrapnel, a mine falling from Russian drones. UATV crew, which was on night duty at one of the stabilization points near the front line, learned about the challenges that combat medics face.
It's the middle of the night. This is a stabilization point. Most often, wounded soldiers are brought here at dawn or dusk, but even during the night, the medics here are not out of work. Taking advantage of a short break, the commander of the medical company, callsign Poet, gives us a tour of the stabilization point.
This is our operating room.
In addition to stabilizing the wounded, medics here often perform emergency surgeries. Just days ago, doctors were fighting to save the life of a soldier injured by a Russian drone. The attackers filmed the drone strike and posted the footage on social media.
The Russian video is quite frightening, especially after seeing the aftermath. The drone flies towards a man and, as it approaches, he shields himself like this. He covered himself with his right arm and the right arm was almost torn off. Several fingers on his left hand were shattered. His body was pierced by shrapnel and sadly his eyes were also affected.
The soldier's condition was stabilized. Now he faces a long road to recovery. According to the doctors, gunshot wounds have largely been replaced by trauma caused by strike drones, and such injuries are unfortunately widespread. Even electronic countermeasures are ineffective against drones guided via fiber optic cable. Russian forces also frequently drop chemical agents on Ukrainian troops.
There are many injuries and poisonings caused by gas. The enemy is using two types of gas. Thankfully, most of the cases we receive are mild to moderate, but there have been a few severe poisonings as well.
As night falls, more soldiers are brought to the stabilization point. The preliminary diagnosis, poisoning with chemical substances.
It's clear it was something chemical, but it's hard to say exactly what.
Just an assumption?
Yes.
One of the affected servicemen finds the strength to recall the moment the position was hit and what followed.
There was a bang, a drop, we don't even know what it was. Then came severe vomiting. My partner, poor guy, was in really bad shape. Honestly, we still don't know what it was.
Did you smell anything unusual?
Nothing at all.
The incoming servicemen are not in critical condition. Their lives are not in immediate danger, but they do need care. Tonight, the medics won't be getting any rest.
All of them are either seriously or moderately wounded. There are fewer people here than usual, otherwise there wouldn't be room for you right now.
At daybreak, we leave the stabilization point in one of the most intense sectors of the Kharkiv region. For military medics, there are no days off. Their shifts can last around the clock, but they are prepared for this. And every day they do everything they can to keep fighting for life against death. Reported by Alyona Gramova, Yevhen Karmazin from Kharkiv region, UATV News.
United States President Donald Trump is not happy with the ongoing Russian missile attacks on Ukrainian cities. Well, that's sweet. He said this is at meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Oval Office. Trump noted that he does not know what is going on there, but it is a very bad situation, he said. And Ukraine has already initiated an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council because of the Russian deadly, treacherous strike on Kryvyi Rih. Natalia Husak will talk you into the topic.
U.S. President Donald Trump has reacted to Russia's latest missile strikes on Ukrainian cities, expressing his dissatisfaction with the current situation. Senior officials in the Trump administration have acknowledged that a peace agreement may not be achievable in the coming months due to new demands Russia has introduced during negotiations.
I'm not happy about what's going on with the bombing, because they are bombing like crazy right now. I don't know what's happening there. We're meeting with Ukraine and we're getting sort of close, but I'm not happy with all the bombing that's going on the last week or so. Horrible. It's a horrible. Donald Trump, President of the United States.
This is CCTV footage from a restaurant in Kryvyi Rih where, according to Russia's Ministry of Defense, was allegedly taking place a meeting between Ukrainian armed forces officers and foreign NATO instructors on April 4th. A so-called precision strike with an Iskander-M missile was launched at the restaurant. Russia's defense ministry later claimed that 85 Ukrainian servicemen were killed in the attack.
The Russians are saying that there were supposedly 85 military personnel in that restaurant. In reality, there was no one there. The place is damaged, but there's no blood inside. Nothing. It's a lie. A complete lie.
In reality, Russia's strike killed 20 civilians. 9 of them were children. On April 4th, they were on or near a playground when a Russian missile armed with a cluster warhead exploded in the air. More than 70 people were injured, including children. Ukraine has called for an emergency session of the UN Security Council in response to the strike.
Russia's ballistic strike on Kryvyi Rih last week killed 9 children, the largest number of Ukrainian kids killed in a single attack since 2022. Russia targeted playgrounds in an ordinary residential area with a cluster warhead to maximize casualties. We call for both strong condemnation and firm action. Russia must cease its terror against Ukrainian children and civilians, respond to US full ceasefire proposal, which Ukraine has accepted, and end the war. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on social network X.
Despite this, the Kremlin continues to deny targeting civilian infrastructure and cynically claims it supports the idea of a ceasefire, though, quoting Russian officials, a number of issues still need to be resolved. French President Emmanuel Macron has urged Russian authorities to accept the U.S. ceasefire proposal unconditionally.
While Ukraine accepted President Trump's proposal for a full and unconditional 30-day ceasefire nearly a month ago, and while we are working with all our partners to secure peace, Russia continues its war with renewed intensity, showing no regard for civilians. And if Russia continues to stall and reject peace, decisive action must follow. How much longer will Russia toy with peace proposals from the United States and Ukraine while continuing to kill children and civilians? Emmanuel Macron, President of France.
The United Nations has said it is deeply alarmed by the continued Russian bombardment of Ukrainian cities, including recent strikes on Kharkiv, Kherson, Dnipro, and the deadly attack on Kryvyi Rih on April 4th.
We recall that directing attacks against civilians and civilian objects is prohibited under international humanitarian law, and any such attacks, wherever they occur, must end immediately. We reiterate the Secretary-General's call for a durable ceasefire and our support for meaningful efforts towards a just, lasting and comprehensive peace that fully upholds Ukraine's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity, in line with the UN Charter, international law and relevant United Nations resolutions. Stefan Dujarric, spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General.
During talks in Saudi Arabia on March 11th, Ukrainian officials agreed to the U.S. proposal for a 30-day ceasefire. President Putin called the U.S. initiative reasonable, but insisted there were certain nuances that needed to be addressed before it could be implemented. Last week, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the Trump administration expects Russia to show readiness to end the war, and that it will not wait indefinitely. Reported by Natalia Husak, Volodymyr Shtenhelov, UATV News.
Well, it was Henry Keane and News Pulse. Goodbye and see you at the next beat, right?